My sister was trying to call me on the phone, and she said, "Please tell me Adam was not flying last night." And I said, "Why do you ask?" She said, "I just saw a news report." And she said, "There's been a helicopter crash." And that's really the way that we found out about the accident. I had a friend waiting for me who said, "I've been in contact with Samantha and Adam was in the accident."
This is Bruce Lindsay working with Elizabeth Gallo on our continuing project to document the stories of veterans. Today's interview is unique in that we are honoring a Marine who passed away while serving his country, and we are having his parents tell the story. Adam Schoeller lost his life in a helicopter crash in 2016. This is also unique because I knew Adam since his childhood. I was his scout leader, and Adam was on many sports teams with my son while growing up. I also know his parents, Ralph and Laurie, very well. They graciously agreed to tell his story so that others can hear what kind of a man Adam was, and how his parents have used this tragedy to start the Sergeant Adam C. Schoeller Memorial Foundation to help others who have lost loved ones while they were serving.
All right, well, hello. My name is Ralph Schoeller.
And I'm Laurie Schoeller.
And we are the parents of Sergeant Adam Schoeller. Adam is our son who joined the Marine Corps right after high school in 2008. We were approached by Bruce Lindsay and asked if we would consider maybe interviewing or being interviewed about our son Adam, and we agreed. And we feel honored to be able to do this. And so we hope to be able to share some of Adam's story with you, the kind of a man that he was. Or is to us. And so, but yeah, Adam grew up in our home. We went to church every Sunday. He was kind of a class clown, I would say, at younger ages. Certainly when they went to youth retreat at church and so forth, he was an athlete, played ball, various types of sports. And he certainly liked girls. There's stories we probably won't go into with that, but in any case, yeah. And he, Boiling Springs graduate of 2008. And anything I messed up to high school?
I don't think so. He was involved in football, baseball, wrestling. One particular wrestling story was that the coach would ask Adam to do a huddle and pray before the matches. He's got the nickname Pastor Adam, and he held on to that for all 4 years of high school. When he graduated in 2008, his intention was to enroll in Westchester, which he did, and follow in his sister's footsteps and major in criminal justice. And he didn't really seem settled in doing that. And one day Ralph and I were at dinner, and Adam texted and said, "Mom, I think I'm going to join the Marine Corps." And we said, "Don't sign anything. We need to talk when we get home." And he convinced us that that was the route that he wanted to do. His exact words were, I really feel drawn to do this, and if I don't do it, who else is going to do it?" He was really drawn to the Marine Corps. He said he wanted to be part of the best, and he really did not even consider any of the other branches of service, which were at that time paying enlistment incentives. So he left for boot camp in September of 2008. He went to Parris Island for boot camp and finished sometime around December. We went down for graduation, and it was quite a moving experience.
One of the things that happened during boot camp was that when they go to rifle ranges all the time to qualify, and one of the things that tears especially Laurie up is he qualified. He did very good one day at a rifle range, and that earned him a phone call home. And so he called his mother, and his mother was at work and was not able to take the phone call. But he left a message, which we still have today through various phones. We saved that voicemail message, but you can hear the rifles firing in the background, and he's yelling, trying to get this. He was only on for about a minute, and he said what he was doing, and he tried to call back, but he never got another call back. But yeah, and when he was in boot camp, one of the things, well, the only way you can communicate is to actually write a letter, a physical letter. And so I would try to write a letter every day while I was at work during my lunch. It may have just been a couple of paragraphs, but just something, because I'm sure they just really looked forward to getting mail, when it was that time of the day. And but I realized, but it had been so long since I actually last wrote a handwritten letter. But I thoroughly enjoyed doing that, and of course, we loved getting mail from him as well. And so, yeah, during boot camp, and it was, to me, when he was in boot camp, it was one of those times in my life where, I was keeping things in perspective, like, oh, things may be getting bad at work, or I've had a bad day doing something, but I know what Adam's going through. And whatever I'm going through probably pales in comparison to what he's going through. So him being in boot camp motivated me. I was so proud of him. I enjoyed writing to him. Laurie did the same thing. And we always loved reading his letters when he wrote to us. So, but yeah, he graduated boot camp, was that December of 2008. And we went down to Parris Island for that. The Marines are big on encouraging families to please come down to graduation, and we wouldn't have missed it. And boy, that was something. They really did a good job parading around. You got to see the facility. And I remember when we first saw Adam, I almost didn't recognize him because he had lost a significant amount of weight. And I'm like, my gosh, what are they doing to these guys down here?
Starving him to death.
Yeah. And then the other thing I remember when we were there is we got a chance to eat with him in the what do they call it? The dining
Subway,
facility,
Chow
hall
hall.
or something.
I think we took him to Subway.
Well, when we ate there at the dining facility on base, we were all, I didn't even forget what we ate, but Adam had his devoured within like 30 seconds. We're not even halfway through our meal, and that's just what he was so used to. And just memories of Parris Island graduation, and then driving on home, getting him home. He wanted to stop at McDonald's. Didn't he get a couple of Big Macs, and he ate them down so quickly he got himself sick. But yeah, just stuff like that. But yeah, after boot camp, he went through. He was going into air crew. He was going to train to be a crew chief on CH-53 Super Stallions, and so there was a lot of different schools he had to go to following boot camp. It must have been at least 4 or 5 different places, including up in Massachusetts, I believe. There was Sears School, and that was, he told us some experiences there, which
that was in Maine, up there by Bobby's house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an interesting time up there, apparently. But then his first assignment was down in New River in Jacksonville, North Carolina, with the 464th. And that's where he started his career as a Marine crew chief on CH-53s. So he enjoyed North Carolina. I mean, we went down there a number of times to visit. He did go to Afghanistan in 2011. And there was some pretty rough times over there, but he and a lot of his crew, a lot of the guys he worked with, were recognized with some medals, various medals, and just some of the stuff I know that those guys went through and what they saw. He shared with me a couple of things, and it just breaks your heart as a parent to hear that your son has to see and experience what they did over there. So, but he did good at the 464th, and then he went on that MEU, right? The expeditionary. They went
2014.
2014. He did that, yeah, and they went through Spain and Portugal on their way over, and I know
We're
they
in Greece.
yeah, in Greece, yep, and they spent a lot of time in Djibouti. That was where I guess the MEU was parked or docked outside, and they would take boats into country there. I'm not sure. We didn't hear an awful lot about Djibouti, but that's where the MEU was, and some interesting situations over in Djibouti as well. But I always remember when they would come home, we would always make a point to go down there and welcome them home. And boy, what a great time that was, just to see him. You know, when he's on the MEU, you're trying to communicate however you can. We would send calling cards out to the ship, and if he was lucky, he could grab a phone and he could call us every once in a while. Facebook was absolutely the best way to communicate when they were deployed, so that, they didn't have a lot of computer time, whether they were on a MEU or whether they were deployed in Afghanistan. So if he could just sit in front of a computer for a couple minutes and update Facebook, boom, that could be blasted out to, everybody and their brother, including their parents, which we were thankful for. So,
The
yeah.
ironic thing about his choice of MOS is that Adam was definitely afraid of heights. And so when he talked about being a crew chief, I thought, I don't know if this is going to work or not, especially because they have to.
The crew chief is the guy who stands in the door and hangs out the window.
I was going to say, he hangs out with that back hatch open, and they're
Yeah.
hanging out the back. And but
the ramp is
he
down.
truly loved being up in those helicopters, and he really enjoyed when the pilots would let him do a little bit of fly time, of course with their supervision. But it was he was really honored to be able to be up there in those great big helicopters. So Adam came home from his MEU in
November 2014 or something.
November 2014. At that point, he had been talking with the friend of someone who wanted to go to the Marine Corps Ball. So Adam and Samantha met and went to the Marine Corps Ball in November of 2014. And we met her around Christmas time, and he said, I think I'm in love. I think she's the one, Mom. So in February of 2015, they got engaged, and they were planning on an October wedding, but the Marine Corps had other plans, and he got some orders to go to Kaneohe Bay in Hawaii for August 1st. So he called us and said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I want to take her with me. I don't want to go without her. So he hurried the wedding up, and the only open date was July 4th, which happens to have been Adam's favorite holiday. So they got married July 4th of 2015 in Wilmington, North Carolina, followed by fireworks. And they were home here, I don't know, a couple days later.
I want to back up, but the bachelor party.
Oh, the bachelor
Yes,
party.
the bachelor party.
The infamous bachelor party, which Adam insisted that I be invited to. And he wanted to do that because he always told me I would be his number one girl. This is always the part I cry with. So at the bachelor party, he took me aside and asked me if I was okay if I wasn't his number one girl anymore. And I said, heck no, but I'll give it a shot. So that's sort of a story that's carried through even to the memorial service in Hawaii when they did the service at Kaneohe. But it's always something that warms my heart to think that my son thought I was his number one girl.
And he's the only person I know who insisted on his mother come to the bachelor party, and she did, and we had a great time down there, and it was a lot of fun, and very memorable, and so just yeah, it was fun.
Almost forgot to include that part.
Oh, I wouldn't forget that.
So they were married in July, and they came home for a few days here, and I'll never forget the day Adam left here. They were driving to California, where they were going to put their car on a ship to be sent to Hawaii, and all their belongings had been packed, of course, down in North Carolina, and they were on their way. And when he left here, I just had this sinking feeling, and I hugged him and I was crying, and he said, "Don't cry, Mom, I'll see you when you come visit me in Hawaii." And they drove down the road, and I cried for I think a good hour at least, with the thought that I just don't know when I'm going to see him again. And I knew it was going to be a long stretch. They had asked that we give them 6 months in their new home before we considered visiting. So they drove across country, and they saw all these, they stopped at lots of places. So this was their honeymoon. So Adam called us from Memphis, and they were visiting Graceland, and he said, "Mom, this dude had some cool stuff." And they visited all kinds of animal sanctuaries, and just lots of sights on the way as they were traveling out to California. They had about a week to get there. I think they had a little car trouble on the way, and they finally got to California and got on a flight and went to Hawaii. They had some base housing, and Adam would FaceTime us and walk us around the house and show us what they had done. And they were literally steps from the ocean, which Adam always loved being at the beach and the ocean. And we were actually trying to plan a trip to see them around March of 2016. And I had been in contact with him in January, just the Sunday before the accident that we'll talk about in a minute. But I tried to call him, and he texted me and sent me a picture. He was on the golf course, and he said, "Mom, I'm busy golfing, but this is a place I want to bring you and Dad when you come." And I said, "Well, that's what we want to talk to you about. We want to figure out a time when we're going to come visit."
He made it very clear, "I don't want any visitors over here in Hawaii. Just give us 6 months. That's all." Mm-hmm. And so we honored that, and we said, "Okay, 6 months exactly is March, and we'll be over there in March." But yeah, those pictures of the golf course, beautiful. It just looked like paradise over there, and they were enjoying it, and they got the on-base housing, nice little place. He would send us pictures because they'd repainted it just the way they'd wanted it, and he'd send us pictures on Facebook about what they had done. He was just so excited to show us when we got over there what they had done to their place, their own place. Mm-hmm. So and that was I guess that was soon after they got there, which was
in August.
Yeah, in August. Yeah.
So the day of the accident was, Ralph and I started that day as we always do. We still do the same thing usually. We attend a 7:45 fitness class, and we went to class. And when I was done with class, we would shower and go our separate ways. Ralph to Harrisburg and me just to Carlisle. And my sister was trying to call me on the phone, and she said, "Please tell me Adam was not flying last night." And I said, "Why do you ask?" She said, "I just saw a news report." And she said, "There's been a helicopter crash." And that's really the way that we found out about the accident. It happened January 14th, 2016 at around 10:30 p.m. in Hawaii, which actually was the 3:30 a.m. January 15th here. And so that was, I don't know, 8 or 8:30 when my sister was calling and texting. And when I came out of the door of the locker room, I had a friend waiting for me who said, I've been in contact with Samantha and Adam was in the accident. So that is really the time when we found out for sure that Adam had been involved. I called Ralph, who was on his way to work, and we, of course, met up back here at the house later that day, probably midday, maybe 1 o'clock. Now, we don't have a huge home, but we had probably 40 people crammed in here. Our whole driveway was full. People were lined up down the street, and the Marines pulled in. Probably about 12:30 or 1 o'clock to give us our notification. And, you know, at that point, I think we were still thinking, well, they'll find them. You know, they got in the lifeboats and or the rafts, and they're floating around, and he'll just be hurt, and we'll go to Hawaii, and, you know, whenever they find him, we'll see what needs to be done. Samantha was in touch with us and said, I really need you guys to come here. So we hurriedly packed. Ralph made flight arrangements later that day, and we flew out early the next morning. We flew, my recollection is from Harrisburg to Atlanta, and direct from Atlanta to Honolulu. And I want to tell you, that was the longest darn flight. And all I could look at was the screen on the back of the seat in front of me. And I was looking at where we were and where we were heading. And I just kept looking off that north shore of Oahu, and thinking, Adam is out there somewhere. Where can he be? And of course, we had no communication during this 12-hour flight, so we were very distraught. You're joining with a lot of other people on an airplane like that who are going to Hawaii. It's a great trip. You know, they're going on vacation. They're so excited about it. And we were
just trying to hold it together.
Not very well, but yes, we were trying to just survive to get there. Do you want to pick up on when we got there and some other or any other details about the day we found out?
Yeah, I mean, when we had so many people here giving us support, we're really just waiting to hear a phone call or something. And I'll never forget when the Marines pulled up in the driveway. It was a car I did not recognize, and I saw 2 Marines get out of that car. And I started walking up to the house, and I'm like, you know, this is just not happening. You know, I don't, you know, and they came up and they had identified themselves, and what they told us was that Adam was involved in an accident. He was one of 12 Marines involved in this accident, and that search and rescue was underway. And so I'm like, you know, I was relieved that they didn't say, you've lost your son. He's being, you know, searched for, you know. So that was hopeful to me, and I held on to that the whole time. But that flight over there, because you don't know what's going on, you're out of communication for the whole time you're in flight. You know, I was personally hoping that by the time we got there, Samantha would meet us at the airport and run up to us and say, he's good. They found him on one of them little rafts that, you know, that's deployed when something happens. And but Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. She met us there with one of her, I guess, neighbors or girlfriends or something there, and they took us back to their house, the house that Adam had showed us and was so proud of, and that's where we stayed for the week. We were there pretty much, I think, maybe almost 2 weeks. I forget exactly, during the whole search and rescue, and while we were there, they had us each night go to the chapel, where they would give all the families that were there updates, of the day's activities, what they found, what they didn't find. And so, we just remained hopeful as best we could through all this. And then the one night came where they said they were changing the status of this from a search and rescue to a
Recovery.
salvage and recovery, which, that kind of took the wind out of our sails a little bit, because the search and rescue, they are looking for people. And when they change it to salvage and recovery, as I understand it, they're not expecting to find survivors, just trying to, but maybe, so that was a bad day. And we started hearing where they were starting to find remains of some of the Marines. And so this was getting a little tougher, as each day went by. I remember while we were there, we would have all day to spend, waiting. We knew we were going to get an update that night at the chapel. So the Keiko, and I want to make special mention of the Keiko there. His name was Captain Darren Carrier, and he was very instrumental in giving us updates, with the family. He was very good. And also the chaplain, the Navy chaplain, Travis Gardner. These guys would always come together at the house we were staying, Adam and Samantha's house, just to check on us, see how we were doing. And they made arrangements one day to take us out to the North Shore. They had actually closed the beach for the period of the search and rescue. No public, nobody could be out there, because they were looking. They actually had Marines from Kaneohe Base walking the beach line, looking for debris, looking for anything. But they allowed us to come out there and just be on the beach. That's like the closest that we could be to Adam. And off the shore, about 2 miles offshore, was, and I wish I could remember the name of the ship. They had brought this ship, I think, over from San Diego. It had the deep range ROV to search the bottom of the ocean. This was in about 400 feet deep of water. So, but I just remember looking out, seeing the ship out there, knowing what operations were going on. They had civilian people with boats helping in this search. People walking, again, the Marines walking along the beach, and we saw all this that day. And I was just so thankful that those guys thought to allow us to do that. I think they had to get special permission for us to be on that beach. And we huddled up. We said a prayer. We know he's out there somewhere. And so then the week went on back, and just waited for more news later that day. And so, like I said, I think we were there for about maybe 2 weeks. And basically they advised us, you guys may as well go on home, and we'll keep you posted. That these updates were going to continue coming each day. So we did. We flew on home and just waited. And
they conducted a memorial service on the flight line.
Yes.
January 22nd of 2016. It was obviously a tough day. Hearing stories about all 12 Marines, seeing their families, everyone was there. It was such a breathtakingly beautiful place, and I just was thinking that what a great place Adam was serving his country, and then for it to come to this kind of end, it was just devastating. Can't even put it into words, honestly. We actually, another coincidence that we had was Adams Elementary principal had a son who was over there in Kaneohe, and he was one of the upper officers. Was he the CO of the base? Derek Klepper.
Not sure.
Yeah, it was Derek Klepper, and he sought us out at the memorial service. And I think Mr. Klepper had come over here, but we had already left to head to Hawaii, and he had come over to the house to let us know that his son was there, and if we needed anything, we should contact him. But Derek and his wife found us, and Derek ended up extending his time there at Kaneohe so that he could assist with the accident report. And when we got home in January, we just assumed that, by sometime in February, we were going to have remains. So we started planning a memorial service, which we conducted in February 20th of 2016. We were overwhelmed with how many people came in. There were over 900 people in attendance, people from all over the country. Ms. Geico came in from Hawaii. Just lots and lots of kind words and messages, lots of funny stories to be told about Adam's antics, and we waited. That's all we could do. We had conference call briefings, and we would have them, I don't know, every other week, where there were 50 or 60 people on a conference call, and they were telling us, what progress had been made, and if my understanding was if Adam's remains would have been located, that we would have been told that separately, not really on this debriefing phone call. But I think we realized probably sometime in May that they were not going to locate his remains. Of the 12 Marines that were in the accident, 9 were identified and located, mostly with DNA, because the explosion was so catastrophic that there were not bodies that were found. And Adam was one of 3 that were not located. The Marine Corps did do another sweep with the underwater drone or underwater amphibious vehicle just to make sure that there was nothing down there. And when they did that, they were picking up things as small as a pen, and they would turn it around and look at it and see if it was something that needed to be brought up to the surface. That was another one of those devastating phone calls where I think I probably had a major meltdown that day when I realized they're not going to find him. What we didn't realize at that point until we got the final report in September of that year was that there was home video footage of the explosion midair, and so we didn't have that information, and waited 9 months really to get it. We do have some underwater video footage and things that we have not looked at. They did recover Adam's plate helmet and a couple other things from his bag, and obviously they knew from the start that he was aboard one of the helicopters. So that was September 2016. Am I missing anything? I'm probably missing a lot.
I mean, that pretty much, we got the accident report in 2016, or September of 2016. Uh, with Adam being one of the three where they actually absolutely recovered nothing. Um, uh, Oddly enough, if you want to call it that, I I was looking at that as a positive thing because I just pictured him washed up on one of them many little islands out there, and that kept me going. That kept me going. I was convinced this was going to happen. Him and those other two guys. And so, but time went on, and it's been close to 10 years now. And I have not heard of any reports of that happening. But I think that shred of hope uh, kind of kept my sanity, if you will. And we went to one of the other Marines' parents up in New York, and they were devastated. Obviously, it was a Christmas thing. We went up there, and they had recovered some remains of
Jeffrey Sampler.
Simpler, and they were very unsatisfied and unhappy with that. So I don't know. Adam being one of the three where there was nothing recovered. Yes, we would have liked to have had something, but that gave me some hope to hold on to. The other thing, being a Christian, and I know Adam was a Christian, is there are a couple of situations in the Bible where God did not let these men die. He actually just took them. And I'll mention my Aunt Paula. She was a devout Christian, and she told me flat out, she says, I just feel, Ralph, that God just took him. He probably wasn't even part of that explosion when those two helicopters collided. I think he just took him. And, I'm good with that. I'm settled with that. And so now I know why there was nothing found of Adam, because God took him. And so call it what you want, but it's a shred of hope and sanity and whatever you want to call it, that it's what I choose to decide happened.
So at some point, you two took this from your pain and decided to do something positive with it. And that's one of the things I want to make sure we capture here is when did that become an idea, and what have you done with that? I'd like to make sure we get that as well.
I think someone said to us, why are you just sitting there? You have to do something. And so we later in 2016 formed a nonprofit, Sergeant Adam Schoeller Memorial, USMC Memorial Fund. Our idea was to support the organizations that really reached out and supported us through the accident by reimbursing plane tickets and some other support. And we held our first event, which was a Semper Fit challenge race in April of 2017, I believe. And from that event, we raised about $25,000, which we donated to the Semper Fi Fund, Wingman Foundation. We have quite a list of organizations, but what we generally do with our proceeds is we will donate to a national organization, and then we look for some small local nonprofits that support veterans and military directly. To date, we have been able to raise and donate about $125,000. We did transition after 3 years of doing the races. There was a lot involved in that, and we, after COVID, we transitioned to doing golf tournaments. They were easier to organize, and although they don't raise as much in the line of the money that we have to donate. What we found in doing these, we bring in Marines from all over the country, and they're Adam's friends who, when they came in for the first golf event, they didn't know each other, many of them, but they just had this common link, and they needed a place to talk about all the things that they've seen. We've had several of Adam's buddies say, I've lost 30 friends. Um, they suffer from much loss. So over time, I think we've decided that this is much bigger than the money that we can raise and donate. It really is getting Adam's buddies together, and they're talking and reminiscing and telling stories, and it's their therapy time. And so we don't really care if we don't have another dollar to donate, honestly. Those guys all mean an awful lot to us, and they don't mind telling us how much Adam meant to them.
Yeah, we just had a lot of comments after the accident. Pilots and other crew chief and other maintenance and people just telling us what Adam meant to their lives. How pilots would say, "I felt better when I knew he was back there." Pilots saying he made me a better pilot. Some of his other buddies, when they would talk about post-flight stuff, how they would talk about that, but they would talk about, God, and they would talk about girls, and they would talk about music, and but Adam always enjoyed, or he never held back talking about his faith, sharing his faith, talking about God and that sort of thing. And yeah, we needed something on a positive note. We came to the conclusion that what has happened here to our family by losing Adam, it's something that just won't go away. We've heard a lot of people say, give it some time, you'll get over it, you'll get through this, and that just doesn't happen. And I know that they mean well, and I get it, no problem with that. But it's a burden you have to shoulder for the rest of your life. And so we just kind of thought that maybe if we can somehow balance that out with something positive, let's do a foundation, let's do a fund, whatever we want to call it, a nonprofit, and raise money and give back to those organizations that reached out to us. And like Laurie said, that's what we've been doing, and we're still doing it. But this is also kind of transitioned into some therapy for these Marines that have come in. I'm convinced that all these guys have a little bit of trauma in their hearts, in their lives somewhere. They may not have been diagnosed with PTSD or something, but I know they have something in there. They're doing a good job of harboring it and not letting it get to the best of them. But I think when we create this safe place, which we call a golf event, where these guys can all come together and stay together, and they can talk about some of the things. Not that they're doing that the whole time they're together, but they know that they can, and they can understand each other. They have their own lingo, right? They talk about experiences that only they can understand as brothers being Marines. And so we are trying to cater to that. We want to keep that. We've had people say, you know what, even if you don't do a 5K challenge or a golf event, still have these guys come together. And we'll take them to Gettysburg. We'll take them to golf on their own. Just have that place, have that reason for them to get together. And the gentleman that Laurie was mentioning, that he has seen over 30 of his friends. He's only 35 years old. I can't imagine being 35 and knowing that I have lost 30 close friends over those years. That's a lot. That's a lot to deal with. And so. Any way we can help these guys, thanking them for what they've done, helping them to get through what they've been through. That's what we're trying to do at this point with the fund. So
We went back for the first anniversary, and Ralph got in touch with was that a catamaran?
Mhm.
What was that boat? And the captain took us out to the accident site. That was Ralph's request.
we got the coordinates and we gave to him, and this
He
boat.
said, I don't need them. He said, I know where it was. He said, I was here when it happened. He said, I know exactly where it was. And he took us out there, turned off the boat motor. And this is the funny part, but there's this huge albatross that was flying over the boat. Now you have to remember we're 2 miles offshore, and this huge bird is just, there's barely land in sight.
It's kind of circling us a
And
little.
he's circling us, and all of a sudden he poops, and it came right down on my head, right here. And I just started laughing, and I said, what on earth? And the boat captain was like, he said, that's your son. And I said, well, what's he saying? He said, we're here. He had turned the boat motor off. He said, he said chicken skin, but goosebumps. He said, that was your son. He said, I will never forget this day. And of course, we had to have a little toast of Jameson while we were out there for Adam. And we threw some flowers in the water, and that was a healing trip for me. It was one that Ralph insisted we go on, that I didn't want to go. I didn't care if I ever went back to Hawaii. And I flat out refused to go. And Ralph said, I'm going to insist that you do this. I really think we need to go. So we haven't been back since then. But.
Well, we just kind of figured that, 2 miles offshore is where that accident occurred, and having a boat go out there right where we saw that big Navy ship that day we went out to the beach during the search and rescue, we figured this would probably be the closest we'd ever get to Adam, buried at sea, whatever you want to call it. We threw flowers in there. I even wrote a poem. I have it. I can read that later. It was just because Adam was always one who gave toasts. He would write poems and all that. And I said, because he was that way, I'm going to write a poem to read while we're out here, right where the accident had occurred. So I did write one. I still have it, and I read it while we were out there that day.
He had a Galapagos shark under the boat too. He was just swimming around, just. A white, and they're white, so it was just I don't know, it was very calming to be out there, honestly.
Yeah, it was kind of like a sunset thing.
Yeah.
So it was the time of day. It was just really a nice, setting.
Well, I definitely appreciate you guys talking about this, and I know it's not easy, but it's so important to me to have people hear his story. So it's not just a picture on a wall and the Mission Barbecue and there's a picture of a guy on the wall, and it's so much more than that. And I knew him, and I knew him probably from the time he was 5, because him and Kurt were in the same grade, and with Emily and Colin being in the same grade, I knew the Schoeller family from the time they were kids, and he was one of my Cub Scouts and on the baseball team with Kurt, and not someone you forget no matter what. And he would have been in 17 years by now.
Yeah.
And he would be retired, and he'd be coming back here with a bunch of little kids, and he would be the baseball coach, and he would be working with the kids in the band.
You know what he wanted to do?
What?
He wanted to be a gym teacher.
Yep.
A PE teacher.
And he would have been the coach of every single team that came up, and he would have been doing all this stuff. And I just think there's this void that this place has now because of him.
Well, I tell you, we appreciate guys like you who have always been there. Well, Will Tallman, that bridge right there by South Milton Park, he approached us and wanted to dedicate that bridge. We said absolutely, and so that was amazing. And
we always have to honk when we drive.
We always honk when we drive over Adams Bridge.
We think these people that live here probably there's those people again always honking when they go over this bridge.
Yep. Well, you've got a good reason to.
But it's interesting that you say about his retirement thing, because I always joke with Adam. I said, you know what? If my math is right, you're going to be retiring from the Marine Corps, but at the same time, I'm going to be retiring from my career. Right. But I'm going to be in my mid 60s, and you're going to be not even 40 yet. I said, that doesn't work. How does that work? But but you're right.
Thank you, Bruce, for doing this. We really appreciate it.
We sure do.
Yeah, thank you.